Welcome to the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education podcast series. I'm Dan Manson. With me today is Mandy Galante. Mandy spent many years as a high school cyber educator at Red Bank Regional High School and now has moved to Modern Day Prep School. Mandy is one of the superstars in high school cybersecurity. She has taken her cybersecurity competition teams to the finals of Cyber Patriot many times and has been involved with several other national cybersecurity competitions. Mandy, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us how you became involved with cybersecurity competitions.
It goes way back, in fact, probably to the very beginning of my teaching networking classes. So before I even started teaching cybersecurity, we would do the CompTIA certification exams for my students. And the whole class had to take them. It was required. And CompTIA at the time was doing some sort of mentor program where I could nominate one student a year for a stipend of about $150, one in networking, and then later on one in cybersecurity. And so that actually was the first time I realized how much it could motivate my students. So they would take it, they would take the network certification exam, and whoever got the highest score, I would nominate for that recognition. And that was the very first time. Then we were also involved in Future Business Leaders of America. They had some competitions. So that's how we got started. That would have been back in like 2006, 2007, before we even had some of the cybersecurity competitions that are going on today. But that's when I started realizing that kids just love, to win something.
Kids love to play for something. And what I love about cybersecurity competitions is that it's not like a traditional classroom experience where you're worried about your grade. You're more playing for the fun of playing and bragging rights, which is a pretty cool thing to play for.
Bragging rights is very big. Absolutely. It doesn't even have to be anything cool that you actually won. It's just the fact that you did win.
What was the first Skype cybersecurity competition that your students participated in?
That would have been NYU Seesaw High School Forensics Competition. The very first one that they ran, I think, was in 2009 or 2010. And we participated. And I love getting into a competition when it first starts. We were fortunate to do that because it doesn't take much, to make it to the finals. So we actually did in the very first year that they had the Seesaw competition. We were invited as one of the top, 12 teams to go to New York City for 2 nights and participate in their conference and finals. So that was the first time we actually did what you and I would both call a true cybersecurity competition, and didn't win that year. We made it to finals, but certainly got a taste for that whole concept of team playing, because that's a team one, and sticking with something even though we weren't sure we knew what we were doing. Both of those have been incredibly useful concepts to bring to our competition.
Seesaw is probably the top academic cybersecurity competition in the country. Now they've gone to other countries. They have Seesaws in different parts of the world. What did your students feel about participating with it? Because Seesaw has multiple events going on: Quiz Bowl, embedded systems, poster session. They have the Capture the Flag, of course. What was the takeaway for you and your students from that experience?
Well, we were at least in the early years, we were very specifically involved in the high school forensics component of Seesaw. And back then, they used to have a storyline. So I think the very first year, it was Michael Jackson had gotten killed, and we had to get into his doctor's computer and find the evidence. And then another year, there was something to do with Justin Timberlake and Fake Book. And another year, it was the Jersey Shore. Snooki had gotten killed with some poisoned hairspray. So we had a lot of fun with those. Those are forensics. Those were very specifically forensics, where you were given a flash drive or a hard drive or something, and you had to find the evidence on those. Then Seesaw has more currently evolved into different levels of capture the flag. They no longer really have the story, at least not until you get to the finals. So, and I have to say, this is something I keep going back to, is when a competition can incorporate a story in addition to just the scoring items, it really makes a difference in who it attracts. Different students can get things out of it or can be attracted to it if there's a story. But I mean, we have fun no matter what. When we make it to the finals, we do the quiz bowl too. So yeah, I mean, it's challenging. This is some pretty serious stuff that these kids are participating in.
You've branched out into other competitions. Of course, when Cyber Patriots started, you jumped into that. You've done forensics, CTF. What do you like about your students playing in these competitions?
The first thing I like about it is that I have it consistently seen that it can motivate a completely different type of student than the typical high-achieving academic. We have a fun story that we tell about a kid who's now, he's knocking the ball out of the park as a professional. He works as a developer for Bloomberg. So years ago, he was I'm going to say a freshman or a sophomore, and we had signed him up because he had signed himself up for an FBLA competition. And the day that we were supposed to go, he said he didn't have his permission slip. He had changed his mind. He wasn't interested in going. It looked too nerdy. He didn't want to do it. And I couldn't substitute anybody. So I hammered him and said, no, you're going. We found a permission slip torn up in the garbage can, taped it back together, and we made him go. And he won. He won first prize that day. Not an academic. He had always been a C student. Didn't even know he was that smart. Well, that day got him started. He became one of our top Cyber Patriot players, top Seesaw players, got a full ride to NYU Poly from winning first prize at Seesaw. And he's now working as a professional. And I swear, if he hadn't gotten a taste for it from that competition, he would have continued to have been disinterested in achieving in school. And I see that over and over again, that kids that don't even know they're smart can find out about it when they compete.
So once they get a taste for playing in a competition, they can get hooked. It can bring out passion that the classroom basically doesn't in them.
It's so right. That passion is a good word. Passion for being good at something, and passion therefore means if I'm going to be good at something, I probably want to learn. So obviously as a teacher, if I can find something that motivates and engages students, especially the students who aren't already engaged by grades, that's great. And then the other thing about competitions is the adrenaline. Adrenaline can do a lot of great things. It can really get you motivated. But what I've also found is that it can create a strong environment for bonding. So students are making friendships and making connections, very similar to what we see in team sports. Dan, I know that you feel the same way that I do, that we're seeing a lot of the same behaviors as we see in team sports. Mm-hmm. And why do we love team sports for kids? Because it teaches them about commitment, about being there for your teammates. Well, we have that in cyber competitions too, and I think it's tremendously beneficial.
You followed your students into industry. Have you found that there are things that students learn in competition, such as the value of teamwork, the ability to work under tremendous pressure, that really carry over into the workplace? And have you seen employers that they start seeing that too, coming out of the competitions, the teams that really have the passion for it?
Yeah, and I think working with others absolutely is key. You just named that. The other thing that I would name is perseverance. To be successful in cybersecurity, you really need to stick with it. You have to keep looking for that solution. You have to get your ego out of the way and invite other people to help you look for that solution. These are valuable not only in school. It makes you more mature just going into the college environment, and then definitely your employer is going to find those characteristics very valuable. Perseverance, sticking with something, not getting discouraged, not quitting. You just can't succeed in cybersecurity competitions unless you develop that ability.
I have students that say to me sometimes, I think I'll play in competitions when I know I'm ready. But I tell them you'll never be ready. You have to play to go up the ladder. How do you introduce new students to the competition experience? How do you get them to make that jump?
Well, see, I've been very fortunate, and this is where I think we still have some work to do in our field. I have been teaching 4 years of cyber. So a student would join me as a freshman and learn about computers and hardware. Then they would learn in networking their second year, cybersecurity their third year, and forensics in their fourth. It's incredible if you take both the classroom and the competition, what depth you can get in a student's knowledge base. If you take only one of those, if you take just a cybersecurity class, standalone, no real continuity, you don't have much depth. If you throw kids into cyber competitions, which is, I do this regularly with my middle school students and my beginner students just starting to play like a Cyber Patriot or a FBLA. They're doing it because I've kind of coached them after class, in our team coaching, but they don't really know what's going on. So what I'm looking for is, even in my Gen Cyber Camp, so we do these little small captures of flags in Gen Cyber Camp so they can get a kick out of what they learned during the week, but they don't really know anything. They like knowing a little, and the objective of getting people in that early is to develop that interest so they can develop a learning path in that direction. But if a student only plays competitions and never actually ends up with any formal learning, I don't really think they're going to ever be that good, because they don't know the why of what they're doing.
So you need both. You have kind of a feedback loop where the classroom can reinforce concepts, can give them fundamentals. It's a place they can go back to keep developing their basic skills, but they can apply the skills through competitions in ways they can't in the classroom.
And then that feedback loop comes back again. Somebody is trying something in a competition, has a kind of an aha moment. Wait a minute, that was in class somewhere. And then they go back and willingly dig deeper to learn. But they know where to go because they've already had some learning. So the loop is continuous and very productive. But again, like as you and I both know, we've got to get these kids early. We are introducing them as middle schoolers, as freshmen in high school, and we haven't had a chance to teach them much, but we do have a chance to hook them, to get them excited, and that's very powerful in itself. And then if they can get into a class to start that feedback loop, that's where the real win is when we have both going simultaneously.
Do you have a couple other examples about students that you started to work with in middle school and they flourished through the combination of classroom and competitions, and they went to college and continued and now are becoming professionals? Do you have a couple more stories you could tell us?
Well, yeah, one of my favorites is a young lady. Emily was not in any of my cybersecurity classes, or my tech classes, freshman, sophomore, and junior year. Junior year, she heard about Seesaw, and it sounded like a lot of fun, and she'd always been interested in forensics, the regular blood and guts forensics. So she showed up after school when we were recruiting for people to be on Seesaw teams, and she volunteered. She got on a team, and loved it. So did well. Her team had 2 experienced people on it, so they managed to go to finals, and she just, got the hook. So she signed up for my digital forensics, my senior year class. She was so bright, I just waved her into the class without a prerequisite. And she did forensics. That year, her team won first prize at Seesaw. She was one of the people who got a full ride to NYU Poly. And she just recently graduated, and she actually is in a career. I think she's at Morgan Stanley right now. Did an internship at Google, did an internship with the Secret Service, and then she's at Morgan Stanley now working professionally as a forensics analyst. Who knew that girl, could end up in that spot?
That's a wonderful
but absolutely
story.
worked for her, and females are not as prevalent in this competition environment. So I'm always excited when somebody like Emily really proves that you don't have to have been a tech geek, since you were in 6th grade in order to reach this level of accomplishment. You can come in late in the game even. And I mean, late in the game is high school? No, it's not. Come on. So, but sometimes a lot of people who have not been involved in technology feel like they're already shut out. Look, those kids all know how to do it, But she really was a great example of how enthusiasm can help you over the first little hurdles. So really proud of her. She did a great job.
I talked with a senior manager at Facebook a few years ago about the pipeline. And she made a statement about leaks in the pipeline, that we have talent that basically gives up at all stages. So we could have a first grader look around at other people doing computers and thinking, oh, I can't be like that person. Could happen in 6th grade, could happen in 12th grade, can happen in college. You can walk into a computer science class, and if you see a room full of people that don't look like you, you get intimidated and you can drop out at that point. But I believe that one of the best things about these competitions, it's co-ed. It's a co-ed sport. You can have girls teams and boys teams, but there really is a level playing field because it's what you have between your ears. It's not how physical you are. It's not how fast you run or how far you hit a ball. There's an ability to really develop your talent regardless of who you are or what your background is.
It's absolutely true. I think our job, those leaks, to plug them, is to overcome the social dynamic. So whenever I'm involved in a competition, we're in New Jersey, so we are looking at, typically a classroom is going to be in technology, at least 80% Caucasian male. And so what we have to do is, and we're fairly successful, we have to make sure that when you walk into that room, if you're a girl or if you're a person of color, that you don't feel, that you feel welcome. So, I think the competitions really help us to do that, because you can just try it out. You don't have to sign up for a whole year of the class and maybe feel like you're not good enough. I can just come after school and I can try this. My friend said to come along. And if I feel welcome, that's great, I'll stay. But if I don't feel welcome, it's okay. I can just not show up next week. Mm-hmm. So I think we can plug the leaks. And I think competitions really help us to do that by creating a socially welcoming environment. And then that gives you the confidence to show up in something a little bit more intimidating, like a classroom.
Do you talk to parents about these competitions, these activities? Do they ever ask you questions about it, or do they come up and thank you for providing the opportunity for their children?
Well, at the beginning, they are like, why are you teaching my son how to hack? So, every once in a while, you have to go through the explanation of, I am absolutely not teaching anybody how to hack. I am teaching us all how to be more secure. The learning curve is getting easier because it's becoming more publicized, so that's good. And then they're very grateful. Just like any coach where a team is successful, we do hear from the parents about what opportunities that made possible for their child going forward. It could be something as little as confidence. Oh, this is the first time my child has felt confident and empowered. So, I just got a thank you note, literally, from a set of grandparents from one of my former students who just got his first choice co-op. And the interview process basically reflected on how much he already knew based on, our class and his competitions. And so the grandparents were like, if it hadn't been for his experience with the school and Cyber Patriot, he wouldn't be where he is now. So I've been lucky because I've been doing this for over 10 years. So my students are out of college, they're in their jobs, or they're in college and they're getting accepted to the one they wanted. Again, often because of their success or their confidence from a competition.
How would you compare Capture the Flag and cyber defense? Those are two very popular types of competitions, but they're different.
No, they're really different. So for me, cyber defense focuses on getting to become expert on your system, your Windows system or your server system, your Linux system, and knowing what it takes to keep it in production, but secure it against intruders. That's your focus. It's not an easy thing to do. Capture the Flag, you're really looking at being able to apply your tool skill, being able to use the tools that effectively do pen testing or even hacking, if you will, or reverse malware engineering. You've got to apply those skills. So they're very different in how you compete, except for they both tend to have a forensic component, a component where you have to find something. So they overlap in that way, which I think is interesting. They definitely appeal to different types of people. The cyber defense is very wrapped up around a year of competition, and you ratchet up as you go, and then finally play against a red team. Capture the Flag can be played over the year, but is typically played in a very intense short time period. So different level of energy. In somewhat, I think cyber defense is a little bit more team-based than Capture the Flag, but it kind of depends. Mm-hmm. I think there's something for everybody with, and that's my point actually, is I would never choose, I don't think I could possibly choose between the two different types. I think they have tremendous value. So as a coach, I kill myself coaching, all of that, but it's totally worth it.
Do you think that for students, they may sometimes focus on one versus the other, but it's also kind of a repertoire that students develop? Some of them want to see how well they can do across the board, while others like certain types.
I think it's also even a matter of time. We are talking about high school or middle school students. If they have a sports commitment, they're not likely to be involved in the cyber defense. It is often too much of a conflict. So they can't find that space in their life for a second big commitment. Whereas a Capture the Flag, they just have to stop their life for like a week or so, and they can access that. So I like that too, because for whatever reason, a student might not be able to make the fairly intense commitment to being on a team for cyber defense, but they can still, find all the joy and the excitement and the adrenaline, and even being on a team. Some of the Capture the Flags are team-based, so we have that there. It can be difficult to help a high school student to prioritize and still make this part of their life. And I think a coach has to focus on that, not just cherry pick the kids who have already self-selected and have time, but really find a way to make it available to the students who don't have an easy way of participating.
It's also time-consuming to be a coach. Mm-hmm. What makes a good cyber coach, and how would you make the case to someone that it's worth being a cyber coach?
I mean, the results. I'm just going to go out there and say, my job as an educator is to find and help a student find their best path to having a joyful, productive life, to find the job that makes them happy and helps them be a productive member of society. Now, having said that, the fact that there's over 300,000 jobs right now sitting empty in cybersecurity that pay easily into the six figures, that's kind of a really nice path. So if my student could possibly go in that direction and I can facilitate that, we're doing good for the world and we're doing good for that student. It's a win-win. So right there, if a teacher can find something that is that positive for her students, it clearly is worth the time and the commitment. And I've had the proof in the pudding. I have seen, and actually asked students, I've been promising you that there's these jobs out there and they're really well paying and that they're fun. When you get out of college, could you come back and tell me if I'm telling the truth, please? And they have regularly come back and told me that it is true across the board. They get recruited every single day. Money is incredible, and they love what they do.
Mandy, it's been a pleasure having you on today. I wish you the best, and I really look forward to staying in touch with you and following what you're doing with your teams in the future.
Okay, thank you, Dan. It was really fun talking today.
Thank you.